Arnor, the North Kingdom of the Dunadane, was founded in hope by Elendil and brought to ruin by shadow, pride, and war. It is a tale of ancient cities laid waste, of kings without crowns, and of a darkness that crept from the mountains in silence until it devoured all light. Against this rising evil stood the last heirs of Númenor, outnumbered, diminished, but unyielding. This chronicle follows the Witch King's relentless campaign to extinguish the North and the quiet heroism of those who resisted him. For though the kingdoms fell, their legacy endured, waiting in the wild for a king to return. In the waning years of the Second Age, Elendil the Tall, lord among the faithful of Númenor, led his people across the Great Sea to the shores of Middle-earth. The year was 3320. He raised his banner in the north and founded a new kingdom, Arnor, the realm of the faithful. Far to the south, his sons Isildur and Anarion landed upon other shores and founded Gondor. Thus were born the twin realms of the Dunadane, Arnor in the north, Gondor in the south, siblings of the same noble blood. In Arnor, the Dunadane prospered. They built great cities, chief among them Annúminas, which stood beside Lake Nenwil, near the headwaters of the Arvedui. Yet this peace was but a prelude to war. Elendil and his sons, joined by Gil-galad, High King of the Elves, led the last alliance of elves and men against Sauron, the Dark Lord. For 7 long years, they laid siege to Barad-dûr, until Sauron was overthrown on the slopes of Mount Doom. But the victory came at great cost. Elendil, Gil-galad, and Anarion were slain. The crown passed to Isildur, Elendil's eldest son, who became High King of both Arnor and Gondor. Yet his reign was short. In the year 2 of the Third Age, while journeying north, Isildur was ambushed in the Gladden Fields and slain. The One Ring, which he had taken from Sauron, was lost in the waters of the Anduin. Isildur's youngest son, Elendil, came of age in Rivendell and inherited the kingship of Arnor, while Gondor remained under the rule of Meneldyl, Isildur's nephew. From that day, the realms of Elendil were divided. For 8 generations, Arnor endured, but its strength waned and the wisdom of the Dunadane diminished. In the year 861 of the Third Age, King Erendur, 10th in descent from Elendil and last king of a united Arnor, died. His sons quarreled, and Arnor fractured into 3. Arthedain in the west, Cardolan in the south, and Rudor in the east. There was often strife between the kingdoms, which hastened the waning of the Dunadane. The chief matter of debate was the possession of the Weather Hills and the land westward towards Bree. Both Rudar and Cardolan desired to possess Amon Sul, Weathertop, which stood on the borders of their realms, for the Tower of Amon Sul held the chief palantir of the north, and the other 2 were both in the keeping of Arthedain. Whoever held Amon Sul held the power of farsight and swift communication, a power beyond price in days of growing fear. And even as the divided kingdoms watched and bickered, a new darkness began to stir beyond the mountains. By the year 1300 of the Third Age, whispers of a nameless threat reached the ears of men. From the frozen wastes beyond the Etten Moors, a new realm arose, Angmar. Its ruler bore no name in the tongues of the free peoples, only one, the Witch King. A shadow crowned in malice, he ruled by dread, not loyalty. Yet to those who crept in the wild and hid from the light, his voice was a beacon. He summoned the orcs from their holes in the mountains, and they came, vermin drawn to the promise of blood and slaughter. But not only orcs answered. From the east and south came evil men, mercenaries, brigands, and outlaws, hardened by greed and cruelty. They found in Angmar a master whose will was iron and whose cruelty was boundless. He gave them purpose, and they gave him war. At the heart of this rising power stood Khan Dûm, a black citadel upon the northern heights. Season by season, Angmar grew bolder. Raids became incursions. Incursions turned to open war. And still the three kingdoms of Arnor remained divided, too proud or mistrustful to unite. Thus did darkness take root in the north. The lands that once echoed with the voices of Elendil's heirs fell into silence. And in that silence, the Witch King waited, watching, gathering, biding his time. In the days of King Argaleb, the first of Arthedain, the royal lines of Cardolan and Rudar had failed. Only Argaleb of Elendil's blood remained to claim the high kingship of Arnor. With the legacy of Númenor burning bright in his heart, he sought to reunite the sundered North Kingdom beneath a single crown. The lords of Cardolan, recognizing his descent from Isildur, swore fealty. But in Rudor, the Dunadane had dwindled. Their places were taken by hillmen, and one of their chieftains seized the throne. This pretender would not yield to Argaleb, nor to any heir of Númenor. Worse still, he served Angmar. Rudar had become a puppet realm, its armies raised in secret, its will bent to the Witch King's design. Knowing what approached, Argaleb fortified the Weather Hills, raising strongholds to bar the eastern paths. There the men of Arthedain and Cardolan stood together as brothers, watching the rising dark. And the darkness came. The forces of Angmar and Rudar swept forth in a storm of steel. Argaleb fought beside his men, but valor alone could not hold the tide. In the year 1356, the king fell in battle. Grief swept the land. Yet from sorrow rose strength. Arveleg, son of Argaleb, took up his father's sword and his cause. Aid came swiftly from the west. Círdan the shipwright, faithful friend of the north, sent warriors from Linden, answering the call of ancient alliance. Together, elves and Dunadane struck back, driving the enemy from the Weather Hills and restoring the frontier. For a time, Arthedain and Cardolan stood united once more. The storm had not passed, but in its eye, the north drew breath. The Witch King did not forget. Though his assault had been repelled, his vengeance would be swift. Linden was far, across leagues of guarded land. But another elven refuge lay much closer, hidden in the folds of the misty mountains, beneath stars remembered from before the fall of Beleriand. In the fading peace, Angmar besieged Imladris, but Elrond, aided by the Galadrim, broke the assault. But war was never far. In the year 1409 of the Third Age, the Witch King unleashed another host. Its aim, Amon Sul, the ancient watchtower of the north, crowned upon Weathertop. This was more than stone and pride. It housed one of the Palantiri, the chief seeing stone of the north. Through it, the kings of Arthedain had long kept watch, guiding their defense. To lose it would be to blind the Dunadane. Across the river, Horwell the armies came, burning the borders of Cardolan, encircling the tower in steel. The Dunadane were overwhelmed. Arveleg fell with sword in hand, and the hill was drenched in sorrow. Yet all was not lost. Amidst smoke and ruin, the Palantir of Amon Sul was saved. It was borne north to Fornost, where the line of kings still stood and hope endured. The Witch King took the hilltop, but he did not come to hold it. He came to destroy it. Stone by stone, Amon Sul was torn down. Its crown was shattered, its watch ended. The frontier fell, and with it, the shield of Cardolan. The land was ravaged, cities burned, its people were slain or scattered. Cardolan was left a land of ruin and ash. But not all was silent. In the Barrow Downs, where ancient kings slept beneath the earth, a remnant of the Dunadane endured. Others fled into the deep woods, hiding in glens and hollows, clinging to fading memory. Meanwhile, Rudor, long fallen under the Witch King's hand, was utterly consumed. Its hills echoed now only with the voices of orcs and evil men. The few Dunadane who had remained were slain or lost. Their halls fell to ruin. But Arthedain did not fall. Though wounded, the realm endured, and a new king rose. Arafor, son of Arveleg, was yet in his youth when the crown passed to him. He was untested, but the fire of the west burned in his blood. And the Witch King, sensing weakness, turned his gaze once more upon the north. But from the west came aid. Círdan of Lindon, unwavering friend of the Dunadane, marched forth with a host of elves. Together, elves and men drove the enemy from Fornost and the North Downs, and for the first time in years, the Witch King's advance was broken. And then the Eldar rose in force. From Lindon, Rivendell and Lothlorien, the elves of the west came forth in wrath. They harried the Witch King's armies, giving them no rest in the lands they had claimed. Fire and song filled the hills of Arnor once more. The sky rang with voices not heard since the Elder Days. The Witch King faltered. Assailed from all sides, he could not gather the strength to renew his conquest. His ambition was checked, and for a time, a fragile peace returned to the north. Arafor's reign endured in vigilance. The borders remained perilous. Shadows stirred in the wild. But no further host crossed the Horwell in his time. Yet it was not victory, only reprieve. Cardolan lay broken, its people scattered. Rudar was lost, its hills crawling with the servants of the Witch King. And Arthedain, though still standing, no longer ruled as a kingdom of power, but as a realm of watchmen. And far to the east, in the black halls of Khan Dum, the Witch King waited. His defeat had not broken him. His patience was long, his will unyielding. The war was not over, only paused. In the year 1636, the Great Plague swept into Arnor. Cardolan was the first to fall. Its last Dunadane, guardians of the Barrow Downs, died defending tombs their bloodlines could no longer protect. Yet the Witch King saw not ruin, but opportunity. Upon the Downs he laid a curse, summoning wraiths from beyond death. The Barrow Wights, twisted spirits drawn to ancient bones, haunted the tombs. Travellers vanished. The hills grew cold and silent. Cardolan was gone, and its graves became a warning. Leave the dead to rest, or join them. In the year 1851 of the Third Age, King Araval of Arthedain, great-grandson of Argaleb II, rose with resolve. He looked upon the shattered lands of the north and saw not only ruins, but the faint outline of a kingdom that might yet be reclaimed. He turned first to Cardolan, where the bones of ancient kings still lay and the barrows whispered of glories long past. If he could reclaim it and drive back the darkness rooted there, he might re-establish a line of defense at the Weather Hills, the old border of strength. But the Dunadane were few, and Araval knew he could not triumph alone. He called upon the elves of Lindon and Rivendell, whose memories reached back to the days of Elendil and the ancient friendship between elves and men. And they answered. Together, elves and Dunadane marched beneath shared banners. In the fields of Cardolan, they struck a fierce blow against the forces of Angmar, routing them and reclaiming the land. Yet the victory proved hollow. The soldiers of the Witch King had been driven out, but the spirits he had summoned still lingered. No sword could banish the dread that clung to the Barrow Downs. The dead still stirred beneath the earth, and a terrible silence lay upon the hills. Araval sought to resettle the land, but his people would not return. Fear held them back, not of beasts or enemies, but of something deeper. A sundered veil between life and death, and a sense that the land itself no longer belonged to the living. And the brief flame Araval had kindled, a flame of unity and restoration, flickered and died in the chill wind of the Wights. That same year, a new darkness fell upon Gondor. From the east came the Wainriders, savage horsemen who swept across the land, testing Gondor's strength to its very edge. Whispers passed among the wise that Angmar and the Wainriders were not unconnected, that both moved to the will of a hidden power in the east, seeking the ruin of the House of Elendil, north and south alike. To stand against this doom, Gondor and Arthedain renewed their ancient bonds. In 1940, Arvedui of Arthedain wed Firiel, daughter of King Ondoher, uniting the lines of Isildur and Anarion. But hope would not endure. 4 years later, Ondoher and his sons were slain in battle. With no direct heir, Arvedui staked his claim to the throne of Gondor by blood as a descendant of Elendil and by right of marriage to Firiel, the king's daughter. He remembered the words of Malbeth the seer, spoken at his birth. "Arvedui you shall call him, for he will be the last in Arthedain. Though a choice will come to the Dunadane, and if they take the one that seems less hopeful, then your son will change his name and become king of a great realm. If not, then much sorrow and many lives of men shall pass, until the Dunadane arise and are united again." But the Council of Gondor, led by Pelendur, rejected him, naming Eärnil, hero of the southern wars and heir of Anarion. Though denied, Arvedui was not cast aside. Eärnil sent word north, "I do not forget the royalty of Arnor, nor deny our kinship. I will send to your aid when you have need, so far as I am able." But the aid never came, not in time. As the years grew darker and the people of Arthedain dwindled, the Witch King prepared his final blow. And when Arvedui took the throne, he ruled a kingdom already fading, a last remnant of the West, clinging to stone and memory. And as the shadow lengthened once more, Arvedui sent a final plea to Gondor, calling upon his southern kin to remember their oath. For the doom of Arthedain was at hand. His armies poured from Khan Dûm in vast numbers, and the banners of Angmar advanced south in a black tide. King Arvedui, knowing that Arthedain could not stand alone, sent desperate word to Gondor. But no ships came. Still, the people stood. Even the hobbits, who had long dwelt in quiet, took up their bows. A brave band marched to Fornost and fought alongside the Dunadane in defense of the ancient city. But they were overrun. Fornost fell, and with it, the last city of the north. The survivors fled west. Many were cut down on the plains, others crossed the river Lun, chased by riders of Angmar. Arvedui made a final stand in the North Downs, but when all hope was lost, he fled into the wild with a handful of loyal men. The kingdom of Arthedain was no more. Through wind and ice, Arvedui fled into the frozen north. He found brief shelter in ancient dwarf mines beneath the mountains, but hunger and cold forced him onward. In the desolate lands of Forochel, he came upon the Lossoth, the snowmen of the north, hardy and reclusive folk who had long dwelt beneath the shadow of the cold. They feared the Witch King, but they pitied the last king of Arnor. They gave him food, built him snow huts, and watched as he waited, still hoping for rescue. Far to the south, Círdan heard of Arvedui's flight and sent a ship north. When it reached the bay, the mariners saw a small fire glowing on the frozen shore. But the chief of the Lossoth warned Arvedui not to sail. Yet Arvedui would not wait. He gave the ring of Barahir to the Lossoth and boarded the ship. The prophecy proved true. A storm came roaring from the north. The sea turned to claws of ice, the wind to knives. The ship was crushed, its wood torn and scattered across the bay. Arvedui, last king of Arthedain, was swallowed by the sea. Though Arvedui had fallen, Gondor did not forget. King Eärnil, though too late to save the north, kept his word. In the following year, he sent a great host under his son, Prince Eärnur. When they arrived in Lindon, their strength astonished all. Warriors of Gondor, horsemen of Rovanion, proud steeds from the vales of Anduin. Círdan called the free peoples to arms, and they answered. Elves of Lindon, the last of the Dunadane, and even a small company from the Shire, all came not for glory, but to avenge the fallen. The host crossed into Eriador, and the Witch King, confident in his might, rode to meet them in battle near Lake Nenuial. He had misjudged the day. The armies of Angmar were shattered in the sudden onslaught. As they fled in disarray, Arnor led a swift cavalry charge, catching the retreating host and breaking it utterly. In the final moments, the Witch King himself appeared, mounted on a terrible black steed, crowned in dread. He faced Arnor, and his presence was so terrible that the prince's horse reared in terror and fled. But before the Witch King could strike, another came. Glorfindel, Lord of the Elves, radiant and calm as moonlight on snow. At his coming, the Witch King faltered. No sword was drawn, no duel fought. The Nazgul fled. "Do not pursue him," Glorfindel said. "He will not return to this land. Far off yet is his doom, and not by the hand of man will he fall." So ended the kingdom of Angmar. Though Arvedui was lost, his line endured. His son, Aranath, became the first chieftain of the Dunadane. He wore no crown and sat on no throne, but bore the legacy of kings. From his house came the rangers of the north, silent wardens who watched the wilds, unknown and unthanked, yet ever faithful. Their sons were fostered in Rivendell, under the care of Elrond, who remembered the line of Elros. There were kept the heirlooms of a fallen realm, the ring of Barahir, the shards of Narsil, the scepter of Anúminas, symbols of a kingdom waiting in silence. The north grew quiet. Arnor faded into shadow, but the line of kings did not. 1,000 years later, in the twilight of the Third Age, a king returned. Aragorn, 16th chieftain of the Dunadane, rose as Elessar, king of the reunited kingdom. Fornost and Anúminas stood once more. The line of Elendil was restored, and the north remembered its kings.